1, 2.
Good evening. Hello. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Good evening, and welcome to the pre-Yom HaShoah program. I'm Jade Stoltz with the Jewish Federation of Western Connecticut. We come together today As a community, to honor the memory of millions of lives lost during the Holocaust, we pledge to honor and respect their memories and to never forget. Today, we will learn about those who were brave beyond one's imagination and whose courage saved lives. We honor their bravery today. Sadly, we grieve today for the lives lost in recent attacks that have affected communities of all faiths and in all corners of the world. Together, we stand united in support of faith, love, and tolerance. Together, we stand united against hatred, anti-Semitism, racism, bigotry, and violence. How do we continue to move forward from these traumatic events? I would like to quote Rabbi Tirza Firestone of Boulder, Colorado, with the following. The field of intergenerational trauma healing, also called ancestral healing, is both very new and extremely ancient. It applies to all groups and ethnicities who have suffered grave challenges, such as war, discrimination, poverty, or displacement. Intergenerational trauma healing is based on the understanding that the past does not simply disappear. The painful histories that our ancestors endured, as well as their rich cultural wisdom, linger and intertwine with us to create the patterns of who we are and who we are becoming. Even when past pain remains unspoken or has been forgotten, it becomes part of us and our children, a legacy of both strength and woundedness that shapes our lives. When family members suffer traumas and separations such as war, poverty, mental illness, addiction, suicide, or early death, painful patterns can get frozen in time and lodged in the resonant field of the family. Such patterns can then act like magnets, profoundly influencing our lives and the lives of future generations. Often, the disturbance created in the family field is felt by the most sensitive descendants. However, it is in our power to transform our family's traumas into blessings and their wounds into wisdom. We can learn to release the patterns and behaviors that have come down to us and strengthen and energize the legacies that are positive and life-giving. 3 elements are key to this healing work: awareness, compassion, and choice. The more awareness we have about what our ancestors and families went through in the past and the patterns that grew out of what they endured, the more compassion we naturally have for those who came before us and for ourselves. The more compassion we have for our people and for ourselves, the less reactive and fearful we become. And the more freedom we have to choose how we want to live our lives and what we want to pass down to our children. And now, I welcome Rabbi Eric Polikoff to lead us.
Good afternoon, and looking at it just prior to beginning, let me note that we are strengthened by the solidarity of our community and our elected officials, and we welcome State Representative Arthur O'Neill, who joins us this afternoon. Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away. That's the message of the new exhibit at the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust in Battery Park in Manhattan. The title is powerful and provocative. It runs counter to the desire to look away or to comfort ourselves that such searing cruelty and brutality could never happen here or now. There's a desire to contextualize the Shoah as part of some distant past, engulfing people very different from us. To be sure, history and culture are nuanced, and it's wrong to label every would-be dictator or authoritarian Hitler. But Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away, bespeaks a hard truth. We still live closely in its aftermath. So too the Holocaust, a singular event in history, a systematic cruelty and evil on an incomprehensible scale, occurred not in some remote place, but in the heart of Europe, one of the centers of civilization. Nor is the Holocaust, in Hebrew, the Shoah, ancient history. It was one of the most critical occurrences within the living memory of some of us and within the extended memory of all of us. We thus have a special obligation to remember Auschwitz and the Holocaust in all its horror, the cattle cars and selections, the electrified fences and starvation, the human branding and slave labor, the gas chambers and crematoria, the shootings and nameless graves. Wherever the Nazis went, they and their accomplices abducted, tortured, and murdered with extraordinary mission, sadism, organization, and comprehensiveness. Of course, Jews were not the only victims, but each person with a modicum of Jewish ancestry was deemed subhuman and targeted for the utmost cruelty. In this fashion, 6 million, including 1.5 million children, 2/3 of Europe's Jews, perished. Few were willing to stand up to the Nazis, but there were notable exceptions. Righteous Gentiles who directly sought to rescue Jews, as we'll hear about today, and also those righteous Gentiles, including the peoples of Albania and Denmark, who went to extraordinary lengths to save lives. The Albanian community is represented here today by our dear friend, Imam Ghazi Aga. And that offers us all a lesson of critical importance. Acts of caring and bravery, deeds of humanity, can continue to reverberate past the urgency of the moment. What the Albanian people did has helped to build and sustain the ongoing connection of our two communities and has deepened our bonds into a lasting friendship. Sadly, such heroism was all too rare, and children, women, and men, very much like us, and in some cases close or distant family members, perished in the frenzy of barbaric cruelty before at last the Allies defeated Germany. Within the span of time, 7 decades is not so long. Yet a single moment suffices for those bent on denying the Holocaust or trivializing it with either falsehoods or imprecise comparisons. And as was again sadly evidenced this past Shabbat near San Diego, some remain intent on doing harm. We thus must be resolute in standing up to prejudice, in guarding the memory of the Holocaust, and in working with people of goodwill to ensure never again. Grasping the abyss into which humanity can fall, whether close or far, this annual commemoration sponsored by the Jewish Federation of Western Connecticut is one of the ways we teach our children and remind ourselves of the ongoing work. The mission of this annual event can be found in a prayer in Siddur Lev Chadash, where the writer explains, "Wherever you may be, whenever that may be, I shall be there with you, the last survivor. Because you will be the last survivor, I shall be there, I promise you. I promise to be the memory of your memory. I promise that what you have endured will not be erased from the human conscience. I promise you that this ultimate justice, that neither your name nor your suffering shall be permitted to vanish from world history. You were one man, one woman, but it is as if you had been one suffering humanity. And because you will be the last, it will be my duty to take over your martyrdom as one takes over in a relay, not in order to relive it, but to relate it for all time, to bear witness before history in order that criminals shall no longer be absolved, to teach children that having become adults, they may build a society conscious of its past and resolutely turn towards a future of justice, love, and peace." now invite forward survivors who are present. We invite you forward to light a memorial candle. We invite forward the second generation, the children of survivors, to light a memorial candle. If there are members of the third generation, grandchildren of survivors, we invite you forward to light a memorial candle. We do have members of the fourth generation, great-grandchildren of survivors. I invite you forward. We invite forward any liberators or rescuers who are present. And we invite forward those who have lost a family member or friend during the Holocaust. And we invite forward Federation officers and trustees who are present. And we invite forward Imam Ghazi to light a candle on behalf of the Albanian people and the righteous of the nations.
Soon you will hear from Irene Frisch and her daughter, Sharon Kornman. Irene has written many articles and stories about her experience. She survived the Holocaust in hiding. She will share her story with us today. Please join me, Irene and Sharon.
I apologize for my condition, for not being able to stand up and talk to you. I am, after all, 88 years old. As I look at the kids, each one of you looks like somebody I remembered from my childhood. Each one of you is beautiful and probably smart and nice. Well, I'm here to tell you my story. I want to tell you there are some people who claim Holocaust never happened. There are all kinds of bad people who will deny it, and it is my duty to give you the right account. I grew up in Poland, in a small town. The town was about 45,000 people. 1/3 of it was Jewish. Even though this town was very small, some people were very wealthy because the soil surrounded the soil in the town contained, it was like Texas. The soil has some very special minerals that could be converted into fuel. And so some people went to sleep, there were poor people. There was one guy who was delivering milk, you can imagine. He had a horse and buggy and delivering milk. And one day they discovered that his soil was surrounded his small cottage, was very rich in minerals, and he became a very wealthy man. And naturally, right away, he divorced his wife and married best friend of his daughter. And he was our neighbor. People never change. People in America did not discover. Okay. I was a child of a couple that was very well off. My father was a very successful businessman. He was a skin trader.
Fur trader.
He was going to auctions all over Europe, like London and Odessa and Leipzig, and buying raw skins and sending them to a factory to be processed, so they would be able, ladies would be able to wear nice mink coats and other fur coats. My father was a very successful businessman. My mother was a very nice lady, extremely nice. She had a heart made out of gold. And we were 3 children, my oldest brother, my sister, and myself. When the war started, I was 8 years old. Spoiled, rotten, precocious, little girl with a very big mouth already at that time. On September 1st, I woke up in my room, the room that I shared with my sister, Paula. And I once wrote a story about our room. It was called, I named the story, My Blue Room. You can find it on internet. I think it is there. It was published. My sister woke me up in the morning. We had 2 beds, one bed here, one bed here. In the middle, what was night table. I was very happy to be in the same room with my older sister, whom I absolutely adored. And she was adorable. And my sister woke me up and she said, "Get up, wake up, a war started." War? What war? What are you talking? I did not know what a war means. War meant a game. We play cards, we play war in cards. And she told me that father at night was drafted to the army. We got up and we went outside, and people are running in the small town. They didn't have television. My father had the first radio in the hometown, but there was no way of communication. People were running, screaming, war, war, war. People were digging trenches. I don't know what for they were digging trenches. There was nothing to do with the trenches. Anyway, the war, Hitler occupied. Poland lost the war within few weeks. My father came back from the army, and my oldest brother, who was 5 years my senior, who was 13 at the time, 13 and a half, contracted pneumonia, and the doctors were all taken to the army. There were no normal conditions, and within few days, there was no penicillin. The poor boy died, and I was in the same room when he closed his eyes. Till today, I don't think I ever got over it. There was no psychologist, there was nothing to explain to the children, to deal with the children. We had to run away from here and there. Our town was occupied for a few weeks, maybe a week or so, by the Germans, and then the Russian army occupied. Since my father was well-to-do man, according to Stalin, who was not Stalin, the ruler of Russia, was not much better than Hitler. The difference was that Hitler killed Jews and Stalin killed everybody else. Did not go by religion or nationality. But they decided that my father, being a well-to-do man, was enemy of the state, and they came to our house. They took everything they wanted, and they confiscated my father's business, and they told us within 1 week or so, we have to leave the town. So we went to live in the neighboring town where my mother's sister lived. We were supposed to be taken to Russia, taken to Siberia, which the Russians had a way of moving their people to Siberia. But we were hiding here and there. And 2 years later, we were occupied. Hitler, the Germans, started war in June of '41 and occupied our place. The first day when they arrived to the Polish country, Polish state, all the towns, they told the population, the non-Jewish population, you are entitled and it is suggested that you make a pogrom and confiscate all the possessions from your Jewish neighbors. There were many bad people who were only waiting for the opportunity to grab Jewish possessions. So they came and they killed a few hundred people in my hometown. And we had some nice neighbors, and we were hiding, and we survived the first casualty, the pogrom. I also wanted to, when I saw the rabbi, it occurred to me that this is not what a rabbi looks like in my hometown. I remember when my brother died, and I could not handle it. I couldn't handle it. There was no psychologist, nobody was helping children. So my father took me to a local rabbi, whose name was Rabbi Rokas. He was not maybe so old, but he was gray. He had a very, very long beard, and he was smoking a pipe that was that long. Maybe that, unbelievable. And the rabbi spoke to me, and I did not know what he was saying. He spoke Yiddish, and I spoke only Polish. And the rabbi gave me a little mezuzah, but they did not have mezuzah like we have today. It was a paper mezuzah, and my mother made a little bag, and I was wearing it on a shoestring. And ever since, I have been wearing a mezuzah, always. You never find me without a, today I have a fancy mezuzah. Anyway, the Germans, every few months, they started killing the Jews. Now, I would like to introduce you to somebody very important in my life. This was a woman who was my nanny, and he worked She worked for my parents very long time. And if you believe in God, she was sent from God. Many, many years ago, before I was born, my mother took her firstborn child, my brother, who was 5 years older, and I was not around then. He was a baby in a stroller. My mother put him in a stroller and was going to park. He was a cute, shabby little boy. And while on the way to park, she was stopped by a girl, barefoot girl, teenager, blonde. And she says, "Oh, what a cute baby, can I play with him?" My mother was enchanted by that. "Why not?" She said, "Sure." And she came closer to the carriage, and she started to make faces, and the baby was smiling, and the girl was absolutely smitten. And my mother said to her, "What is your name?" And she said, "My name is Franja." And she said, "What are you doing here?" She said, "I came." She was barefoot, had the possession, her entire possession were in a scarf, in a handkerchief, made into a little bundle, and this was all. She said, "I came to the city from the village. My mother is very poor and she cannot afford to feed me, and I'm looking for any kind of job in a household." And my mother saw that she was so crazy about the baby. My mother said, "You got yourself a job, come with me home." And so it started. Franja became a permanent. She witnessed the birth of my sister. My sister was 2.5, my senior. And then me. When I was born, Franja rebelled. And she said, "I'm not going to take care of 3 children. It's too much." And so my mother saw that she was so devoted, and help was very inexpensive. My mother said, "Okay, don't bother with her. I will hire somebody else to take care of the baby, and you take care of the 2 older children." My mother hired somebody else. I don't remember it, but I was told. She became very jealous, and she threw the other woman out. She fired her. She said, "You don't know how to take care of a baby. I am the expert." And so she took care of 3 children. Well, I had a very charmed life. I went to school. And as I said, the war started. And first the Russians occupied our town, and they took away money and possessions.
Let's move a little forward. The Germans have come back and they have actions. I think there's one action that's very important.
The Russians stayed with us for about 2 years.
But after the Germans.
And when the Germans came, they started out with a pogrom, and then every few months was a different action. My father had many non-Jewish friends. My father liked to fish. And I wrote a story about my father, how he liked to go fishing every Sunday morning. And fishing was not a Jewish hobby. So most of his friends who went fishing with him were Gentile, Polish, or Ukrainian. And actually, when the war started, he was fishing, and they had to bring him. It was on Sunday, and he came back. And he had some money we were selling. He was selling our possessions, and the Germans were killed every few months. They made an action, and they were ready.
Tell about the mayor. The mayor.
One of his buddies, fishing buddies, was a Ukrainian judge before the war. Very wealthy man who lived in a small, that looked like a little castle on the outskirts of the town. Has wife and has a daughter, and he was very wealthy man besides being a judge. And one day my father found out that tomorrow they are starting to kill Jews again, an action. They called it a raid, they called an action. My father ran to this judge, and he had lunch with his wife and daughter, and there were people working for him. He had a lackey, he had few maids. It was like a small palace. And my father said, Osip, you have to help my family. When the Germans came, they told him he has to be a mayor of the city. He didn't like the idea, but he was Ukrainian. But you could not say no to the Germans, they would have killed him as well. So he agreed to be a mayor of the city. And my father said to him, you have to help me to save my family. And he looked at my father and he said, if I help your family, I will lose my family. This was a death. If you helped a Jew, if you saved a Jew, you were killed together. And he said, he pointed at his daughter, a teenager, and his wife. My father did not take it, did not take his no. My father went on his knees in front of his wife and said, you have to help my family. And she said to him, you have to do something. He said, come tonight in the evening, around 7 o'clock. It was in the fall, it was already dark. Come in front of the city hall. Somebody will be waiting for you. Come with your family. My father took my mother, my sister, and me, and we went. And there was a guy who was working in the city hall. He took us to the attic, and we stayed 4 or 5 days in the attic of the city hall, which had like a
clock tower.
Clock tower. We were there, and we witnessed from the windows how people were raided up and killed, and we survived. By the way, this summer, my daughter is going to my hometown. The guy will be memorized, and there will be a plaque in the city hall in his memory, and it will say that in 1943, Judge Osip Kostemski saved in this building a family of 4. My daughter and her family will be going. I am too old for such a long trip.
So after that, you went into the ghetto. They created a ghetto in 1942.
After a while.
Yeah.
But they were killing people,
Right.
and people were so poor because the Germans and some non-Jewish people, mostly Ukrainian people, were coming to Jewish houses and taking whatever they wanted. We had the piano, we played piano. Somebody walked into the house, some non-Jewish people, and said, you don't need a piano, out with the piano. They took it. And they were taking whatever they wanted.
And
many people starved on the street. There were many dead people starved.
And then eventually, in September of 1942, I think the incident with the mayor happened in 1942.
Yeah.
But eventually they created a ghetto.
Yeah.
And they rounded up all of the
All
Jews,
the
put
Jews
them
to
in
the
a ghetto.
ghetto. And like,
Can you explain to everybody what that means? What is a ghetto?
ghetto is a place. There is an old ghetto in Venice, Italy, one of the oldest ghettos in the world. A ghetto is a place that part of the city, few streets, are cornered off, and only Jewish people live there. Whoever enters there, even a Gentile person, if you enter a ghetto, you will be shot. With the Germans, everything was, you get shot. You did not wear an armband. Oh, I forgot to mention, we had to wear armband, white armband with a blue star on it, embroider. If you did not wear an armband, you were shot. If you did anything, you did wrong. If we were supposed to give all our radios, all fare cards, all jewelry, and everything was supposed. There was a place you had to hand it, to put it.
Was there food? Was there school? What
There was no schools, and so in the beginning we missed schools, so we had a tutor coming. I had me and my 4 girlfriends, we were 9 years old, 10 years old. We gave a pound of flour to a young student, Jewish girl. I remember her. And she came to one of our houses and she was tutoring us. If we were caught, we would be killed. Everything that we did on our own was.
So eventually we get to Christmas of 1942 and something happened, very big happened.
Okay.
In the
1942 Christmas, there was an action that took place 4 weeks. Every single day, people were killed. One of the famous painters and writers, Bruno Schulz, was killed on the street. Whoever walked on the street was shot. We were hiding, my mother and me. My sister was working. My sister was only 11, but she was a tall girl, and she looked 14 or 15, and she had a job. She was working as a construction worker. She was carrying bricks, and my father had a job. My mother looked very old. She was only in her 40s, but she was all gray. She could not take. She lost a boy, a firstborn child. He died of pneumonia. And I was a child, and we were not good for the Germans because we could not work, we could not bring nothing for the Germans. So we were supposed to be killed. So now we are hiding for a whole month on an attic in December. And the winters in Poland are much more cruel than here. It was a barn that had no roof, and there was an attic without roof. And nobody could imagine that people would be hiding without a roof in December. So nobody came to look at this attic. I was with my mother for 3 or 4 weeks. We were hiding. And my father was bringing a boiled potato, a pot of hot water.
So what happened on Christmas Eve?
And we were caught. Somebody saw that we were hiding there, and somebody wanted to. They thought, God knows what we have there. We may have something of value. So they denounced us, and we were caught. My mother, my father, my sister. And we were taken to Gestapo, and my mother did not want to watch how we would be killed because we were supposed to be killed. The Germans that came and caught us in that barn, they had in one hand a flashlight and in the other hand a gun. And actually they're supposed to be. And my mother realized that we were, and they touched my head with a gun. And I am 9 or 10 years old. I pinch myself because I think maybe I'm dreaming and I want to wake up. No waking up, there was not a dream. And when my mother saw what is happening, she started to run. And she was not a big runner. She just wanted to be killed. She did not want to witness our demise. And they ran after her and they shot and she fell down. And they thought that she is dead. And they said, and you we take to Gestapo and see what will happen. So from the place where we were hiding, Gestapo was exactly across the street. And we crossed the street and we got to Gestapo. And most of the policemen were Ukrainian people who were cooperating with the Germans. And when they saw a guy with 2 girls coming, oh, they're going to kill them, you know, they're only waiting for them. And it was some kind of a miracle, you know, if you believe in miracle. There was a head of Gestapo, and I remember his name was Gabriel. He was a German guy. And we brought him there. It was Christmas night. And we were brought, and he came out at the Gestapo building, and he said, "What is the matter?" And my father spoke very good German. When my father went to school as a boy, it was not Poland, it was Austria, so he finished German schools, and he was fluent in German. And my father said, "I don't know what it is all about." We were working, and I was working, my daughter was working, and we had our tea, and we were about to go home, which was not true. And they came, and he said, the German said, "And you want to tell me that the little one is also working?" And my father said, "Yes." And I had some kind of papers, fake papers, that I was a kitchen helper. And he said, "Go." And we were sure that our mother was dead, because we heard that so my father said to us, "We have no longer a mother, and we are going home, and my mother is there." And she was shot. They shot through her breast, and she did not even realize for a few days that she was shot. Only, you know, we were living in abnormal conditions, so she had no way of taking a shower or getting washed or getting undressed. She did not even realize that there was a bullet went through her breast. Anyway, my parents saw that there is no way for me to be alive. So they contacted the woman who worked for my parents. She's a poor woman, she does not have money. Her husband, her name is Frania. She is illiterate, she never went to school. She is working some menial work. Her husband was taken to army, never came back. And she comes at night to ghetto, and she looks at me. And my mother said to her, "You have to take her, you have to save her." And she said, "Yes, I will take her to my house, I will save her, and after the war I will convert her, and she will be my daughter." And I got to her. Well, she goes to work in the morning very early. She's very poor. She has 1 room. She has no bathroom. Nothing. She is poor. You know, in Europe, a maid or help is really poor. And I am hiding. She has a bed, and she has a sofa. And the beds in Europe are much higher than the beds here. A little bit higher. Anyway, I stay all day under the bed, and she goes to work. She comes in the evening.
And by the way, my mother at this point is about 11. For frame of reference for all the 11-year-olds here, she's about 11.
But still, I am crying all day. I miss my mother, I miss my sister, I miss my father. She comes home in the evening, and she says, she sees I'm crying. So she goes, she took me out of ghetto on Christmas night. She was very resourceful, and she figured out on Christmas night, the people, these German soldiers who are watching the ghetto, will probably be drinking and having good time, so they will be more lenient. They will not watch so well. My hair at the time was black, pitch black, and which in Europe was very bad, because only Jewish people had black hair. Everybody else was blonde. She puts a big scarf over my head. She holds me by hands. It is Christmas night, and all the Gentile people, Catholics, are going to the church there is a midnight prayer called in Polish pasterka. I don't know what it is. It is what?
Midnight Mass, probably.
Midnight Mass. So we are walking out of ghetto. She holds me by hand and we are singing the Catholic, the carols. And we look like we are going to midnight mass and we are going to her apartment. And I'm spending there some time until she sees that I don't want to eat, I don't want to talk, I'm very depressed, I miss my mommy. So she goes back to ghetto and she said to my mother, it won't work. You have to come, you have to be with her. And she brings my mother, and I am there with my mother. After a while, my mother is begging her, and she goes and brings my sister. Unfortunately, there was no room for my father. My father was a big guy. I am looking at this gentleman, and my father was a very handsome man. He looks like you with black hair. Get up, let me see you. Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. He was taller. He was,
All right, no.
he was taller. I come from a very tall family, I shrank.
Okay.
When I was,
Okay, so what happened?
when I was younger, I was 5'7", and my mother said I was a midget. Anyway, we are there, my sister, my mother, and me. We are starving. Times are very few times. Some neighbors suspected something was happening. So she took a day off from work and she decided to do spring cleaning. So she especially wanted to show her neighbors that it's impossible somebody should be there. So my mother was sitting in an armoire. My poor mother was a tall woman, and my sister and me like this in a box, in a wooden box. And she opened the windows and she was airing her linen and this bedding. She wanted to show that the place was empty. We were there 2.5 years. And we were liberated by the Russians. And when the Russians came, liberated us, they were not nice to us. They said, if you survive, you must have been cooperating with the Germans. They did not know what was going on. Anyway, it was very tough. Somehow we survived. And part of Poland was given to Germans, and part of Germany was given to Poland. And they were big transports of train, and we were traveling to the German part. And on the way, we were traveling by, it was a cattle train, 6 weeks. It was a very long trip. They stopped every place. The times were tough times. They was not normal. It was in 45, and my father survived 3 concentration camps. He was a big, strong man. And he found out that we are alive, and he found out that there is a transport from our hometown, and he followed the train. And one morning, while our train stopped, the door of the train opened, and here stands my father. I thought that he was a ghost, because people who came from Auschwitz told us that they saw him dying. He was very sick, and he was like dying, but he survived. And we were told that he is not alive, and some men wanted to marry my mother, which she did not care, did not want. And here I see father standing, elegant, dressed, with a hat. He survived. And I started to scream like you see a ghost. But I was 13 years old. I did not know I have such a strong voice. That people thought there is a pogrom. People started to run to our car. And my father came, and end of the story. After I recuperated, I saw he had the bag in his hand. And I said, and what did you bring me? I was a child. And he brought a raincoat, blue raincoat. I don't know where he got, for my sister and for me. Anyway, we went to the new parts of Poland. I went to high school. I wanted very badly to go to high school. But some Polish people were anti-Semites. And I remember I was once already in high school. I'm 14 or 15 years old. And I am the only Jewish girl in the high school. My father hired a tutor. I caught up with studies. And I want desperately to be like a 14-year-old child. And the non-Jewish people, kids, were very, very awful. Anyway, I persevered. We went to Israel. I was 5 years in Israel. I was an officer in the Israeli army. If anybody wants to see, I have a picture in my pocketbook in a uniform. Eventually, I came. My sister finished university in Israel. She came to America. Her husband, she got married, and her husband was an engineer, and he got a very good job in Atlanta, Georgia. So she brought me over to the United States. Here I am. And this is my daughter. She has no accent. You cannot fit 5 or 6 years in half an hour.
But I think people will ask questions, but before they do, I want to ask you if you have a message for the people in the room today, what they should walk out of here thinking from you.
Be nice to people. First of all, be nice. You know, when we had some very tough times, when our caretaker, Franja, once came home, and she was pale, she was white, and my mother said to her, what happened? And she said, today on the market, there was a square. On the square, they caught some Polish Catholics who were hiding Jews, and they hung them together. In order to scare the people shouldn't do that. So the German soldiers hung the Jewish people with the non-Jewish people, one next to each other. And my mother said to her, Franja, I am so sorry what I am putting you through. And she said, I remember how good you were to me when I worked for you. Be nice to people, be good to people. Message number 1. Always be good to people.
If anybody has any questions? What happened to Franja? It's a nice story. What happened to Franja after the war?
Okay. We were, Poland, after the war, when we were saved, my father opened a business, he took an apartment, Franja lived together with us, she was part of the family. But the country, Poland after the war became very communist, and we did not want to stay there. And the Jewish people, after Israel was established, had a right to go to Israel. So my father applied, and we went. And as I mentioned to you before, we were 5 years in Tel Aviv. And we begged Franja to go with us. But Franja, I forgot to mention to you. Franja was a very, very religious practicing Catholic. She did not know how to write and to read, but she knew her prayers. And she was going almost every morning before she went to work. She would go to Mass every Sunday. And we had many Christmases together. We had few Christmases with her. We started all together. But she was, religion is a very, I became religious at my old age. I am practicing. I don't, you know, religion is a very good thing if you believe in God.
And so she...
Frania remained in Poland, and we begged her to go with us to Israel. But she said, I cannot leave Poland, I cannot leave my church, I will be speaking different language, I won't be able to pray. She remained in Poland, and we were in touch with her. We were sending her as soon as we started to do something. My parents in Israel, we were sending her money, and she said, don't send me money. You have, you know, she did not want to take advantage of us, but we did help her. And we invited her after I got married and had 2 children in New York. I invited Frania, and my daughter had the privilege of knowing her. She naturally, I did not recognize her, and she did not recognize me. It was many years since it happened.
Frania is recognized at Yad Vashem as a righteous Gentile.
Yeah.
It was very important. Yes, she is recognized there.
We are in touch with her family.
Yeah.
A few years ago, her daughter,
Daughter,
she had no children. Her brother's daughter. Frania did not write, so all the letters later were written by her niece. And so we acquainted by mail with her niece. And one day she wrote us a letter and she sent us pictures of her funeral. She had a very beautiful funeral. She was very, very highly religious Catholic. And we became friendly with the daughter by mail. And then the daughter wrote us a letter one day that her daughter is getting married. Would we come to the wedding? And I said I would come to the wedding. My husband said, if you want to go, we will go. And I said, if I would like to come to the wedding under one condition, that your husband will go with me to my hometown. They did not, they lived in a different part of Poland. And he went with me to my hometown. And I went to the place where we lived, where we were hiding. And it is interesting. I have absolutely no sense of direction. And when we went to her place to hide, we went in the middle of the night. I did not know where the place was. I did not know the other. But I found the place. I went straight to the place. I asked a psychiatrist here, how is it possible with me being so poor with directions, not knowing the address? I went there at night and I came out at night. I went straight to the building. And I think my daughter went a few years with me
We went a few
to
years
my
ago,
hometown.
and we saw my mother's town. We saw her childhood home, and then also where she was hidden. But we did not go into the place where she was hidden, but we went into her house. Some people let us in.
And there was nothing to look.
Yeah,
She
there's
had
nothing.
one room. It was in one room. And my daughter will be going this summer to witness the
The plaque.
commemoration of this guy, the mayor of the city.
After the war was over and the Russians came, they killed the mayor and his wife and daughter because they viewed them as collaborating with the Nazis. So they were...
He did not collaborate.
The Russians thought, since he was a mayor, he must have so they killed him.
But you know, I have to tell you something. Today we see Russian people coming to the United States. It is different. Those are different people. But people were very cruel and very For them, Stalin was killed more people than Hitler.
Are we done? I think we're done. Okay.
Each one of you looks like somebody I knew 80 years ago.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you.
Thank you, and
Thank you, Sharon.
after the end of our gathering, we'll be in the social hall.
I need my catheter.
Just take my hand. Mine just going right there. Oh, the Cadillac is in the corner.
And we,
Just come right.
for those who are able, please rise. We turn to page 530. The El Malei Rachamim prayer, addressed to a merciful God, discusses the deaths of millions of innocent victims. It concludes, may they be bound in the bond of eternal life, and may they rest in peace. These people deserve no less. El Malei Rachamim Shochem Baramim, Hamsei Menuchat Nochana Tachat Kanvei Hashchina, Bavam Krishim Utoharim Kazoa Harakia Bazhirim, Et Nishmot 6 million Achenu V'Achvotenu Shenehargu Al Kiddush Hashem. Ba'al Rachamim Yasdireim B'Tzedek Nefav Lo Lamim V'Tzor B'Chim Et Nishmatam Adonai Hu Nachalatam V'Yanuchu B'Shalom Mishkavam V'Nomar Amen. We turn to page 598 for the Mourner's Kaddish, our prayer of hope and remembrance. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabbah, b'alma divrach hirutei v'amlich malchutei, b'chaye echon v'yomei echon v'chaye d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'olam alav mei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shemei d'kudusha b'rechu. La'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, tush v'chata v'nechamata, damiran v'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronam levracha, may their memories be for blessing, and let us say, Amen. We turn now to page 678, page 678, as we are close to the 71st anniversary of the modern state of Israel, with a mission to protect and nurture the Jewish people. We sing Israel's national anthem.
See
Thank you all for joining us for today's inspiring program. Special thanks to Corinne for sharing her musical talents and Linda, to our incredible speaker, Irene, and her amazing daughter, Sharon, to Rabbi Eric Polikoff for leading today's program, to our survivors, their families, their children, grandchildren, to the 6th and 7th grade students of B'nai Israel Religious School, their teacher, and Director Abby Peklo, to our board, our leadership, and to Imam Ghazi for your constant support. A huge thanks to Kathy Conti, our event and program manager, and to our staff for organizing this event, and to all of you. Together, we remember and we commit to a world free of violence and hate. Thank you. Shalom Aleichem.